the word Shem. Anybody that was born of Shem are Semitic people, man.
Yeah, yeah.
So how you gonna call the Arabs anti-Semitic when the fucking Arabs are Semitic, man?
Yeah.
The Chinese and the Japanese are Semitic, man.
We're Semitic.
Jake, we Semitic, man. How the fuck can I be? Hey, if they say you're anti-Semitic, remark and say, first of all, have you ever looked up the word Semitic? Because I'm a Semitic, man. Okay?
Yeah.
There's this so-called Jew named Yoav Shamir. He's a young so-called Jew, and back in 2009, he did a documentary on the word anti-Semitic, and he went around asking people about it, and nobody had anything.
For the last 5 minutes, I've been saying in my mind, and that confirms it, that I'm gonna have the camera, and we go to the camp. We're gonna interview people. Call it GMS IQ. See where their IQ's at.
Yeah, because he made that thing, and he found out that the word anti-Semitic is bullshit. It's all about making money. And the so-called Jews on there, some of them actually said that it was bullshit. And they said, I know I'm going to lose my money or I'm going to lose my job or whatever, but, the spirit compelled them to say it. And then you had these two couples talking, amongst themselves, quiet while the guy was filming, and they were basically saying it's all a bunch of bullshit. It's a money-making scheme, They build up sympathy for these so-called Jews so that they can make money every year. That's why they make up certain shit, because if they don't have anything to make up to bring out to the people out here, they can't live off the money for the so-called struggles of their people. Because basically what they're doing, they're living off the ignorance of these stupid dummies out here. But that dude, he exposed them.
Yeah, which means that.
Now, I looked up the word Semitic, right? It says Semitic people, and studies of linguistics and ethnology, the term Semitic from the biblical Shem, Hebrew Shem, was first used to refer to a family of languages native to West Asia, the Middle East. All right? In other words, the Arabic language came out of that. The Hebrew language came out of that. All right? The Canaanite Hebrew came out of that. Okay? The languages evolved and spread to Asia Minor, North Africa, the Horn of Africa, and Malta. All right? Says Semitic languages. The languages included the ancient and modern forms of Alamu, Akkadian, including Assyrian and Babylonian dialects, Amharic, Amalekite, Ammonite, Amorite, Arabic, Amharic, Syriac. I mentioned that the Canaanite languages, Phoenician, Punic, or Carthaginian, and Hebrew, which means that this guy Hannibal was an Israelite, man. So Hannibal the Great would be considered a Shemite, man. Assyrian, Chaldean, Eblite, Edomite, goddamn, Edomite, Giez, Old South Arabian, Modern South Arabian languages, Maltese, Mandiac, Moabite, Moabites came out of Shem, Proto-Semitic, Sutian, Syriac, Tiger after the Tiger River, Tigrinya, and Ugaritic, among others. So the term Semite covers a lot of people, man, outside of you bastards, which you are Semites. But you can't take that term to yourself. Okay?
Shemitic Edomites.
Yeah, like they're only Shemites.
Right.
Also,
they're playing off the ignorance of the people.
Yeah, it should be noted that the so-called Jews, they were kicked out of 109 countries. Okay, I got the information here. It says, why were Jews, which is talking about the so-called Jews, expel a total of 109 times from European countries? It says, if it was racism, then why didn't they expel other races? And if it was anti-Semitism, why weren't Arabs or any other Semitic race expelled and so frequently? Wouldn't the Jewish people, the so-called Jews, be wiser to look at the roots of hate toward them rather than complaining about it all the time? And there's a history that proves that the majority of the slave traders that traded Jake was so-called Jews.
That's right.
As a matter of fact, one name comes to mind. What was it? Levy? Anton Levy, was it? I think it was Anton Levy who owned a lot of the ships. One of the ship that he owned was the good ship Jesus, which carried a lot of so-called Negroes to America. I believe the last name was Levy. I'm not sure if it was Anton Levy, but you brothers out there, you can check on that. But I got a list of the countries where they were kicked out. Lithuania, that's back in 1495. France, 1182. Portugal, 1496. Upper Bavaria, 1276. Naples, 1496. England, 1290. France, 1306. Yeah, Nuremberg, and those were the group of peoples that our forefathers in Europe were kicking out, the so-called Jews, because they got to be they got to be a pest, all right, because they're a bunch of low-life. Moses Levy, yeah.
And then
Aaron Lopez, yeah, those two. Yeah, it was Aaron Lopez, which was a so-called Jew, and Moses Levy. As a matter of fact, the brother got to cite the Jewish involvement in black slave trade to the Americas. The main ones that had the slaves, and especially during the slave trading, was so-called Jews. All right, and by the way, Abraham Lincoln, the same guy I was listening to, he brought out Abraham Lincoln was a homosexual. Yep. All right, he had a whiny voice.
Speed, the guy Speed, I forgot his name. One of his companions, I forget the dude's name. His name was something Speed. You know, they showed pictures that he wore glasses. He had to be a so-called Jew as well. That was Abraham Lincoln's companion and shit. That was the guy. He was popping, man. He was one of his so-called aides or advisors. They said him and Lincoln were inseparable. They even slept in the same damn bed. The guy's name was Speed. I can't remember his full name. I know his last name was Speed, something Speed, whatever. But they have pictures of the guy of him and Lincoln together. He's like a funny-looking cracker. He wore little thin glasses. He had like curly, long hair. Yeah, and that was Abraham Lincoln's lover, man.
Don't be surprised if they take this video down.
Yeah,
We're getting on these devils this week.
Yeah.
The guy brought it out that Lincoln had a whiny voice. In other words, he sounded like a girl. He had no bass. He was all treble, no bass. He had no bass in his voice. What else he said of Lincoln? Yeah, he was a so-called Jew. His last name was Springfield. Yeah. His father's name was Springfield. So he was a so-called Jew. And I think he was related to the Rothschilds, Abraham Lincoln. But he brought out that he was a homosexual, man. Which is so-called Jews. They're born homosexuals, man. Perverted people. All right. That's why it was Germany who declared war against the so-called Jews. You know, they got this thing around like the so-called Jews were being persecuted by the Germans.
No, you said it wrong. It was the Jews that declared war against Germany.
I'm sorry. Yeah, you're right.
If you look
right,
it up,
right.
it'll come up.
Right.
Actual,
that's what I meant to say. Right. It was the so-called Jews that declared war against Germany because German products was superior, especially the so-called Jews in Britain that declared war against Germany because the Germans, their technology was far superior. And the so-called Jews living in Britain were jealous. So they declared war. They don't bring that out. There's a New York Times article where it says Judea declares war on Germany. Right. But they turn that thing around like the so-called Jews always do. And they don't bring out the fact that it was in the summer of 1941 and 1942. Most of the so-called Jews died from typhus fever. Those newsreels that you see of the piles of bodies, that wasn't because they were being exterminated in the concentration camps. They died of typhus fever.
Hey, they play on situations, man, like they always do, you know?
So they're a bunch of fucking liars, man, them so-called Jews.
Hey, it says here, okay, this is by Rabbi Mark Lee Raphael, right? I'm not going to read the whole thing. There's a lot of reading there. It says Jews also took an active part in the Dutch colonial slave trade. Indeed, the bylaws of the Recife and Mauricia congregations in 1648 included an impostor